Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to sightedmoon.com. This is September 18th, 2021. And I don't really want to talk right now because I'd just rather listen to more people singing prayers or singing songs. And I just enjoy that part really a lot. So I want to thank everyone who is working behind the scenes to make this day, Shabbat, a pleasure for everyone else. Now, I do thank you and I appreciate it. It does mean something to me. So I just wanted to say that. Samba read something before that about singing. And now I know that singing is going to solve COVID. And by singing, I can lose weight. So I am excited. I'll be singing down the street as I do my run. And people don't believe I run. Yeah, I don't believe it either. Anyway, there's no newsletter this week.
Laughter's good medicine too, Joe.
Yeah, that too. It's pretty funny when you see me run. You wouldn't know I used to be a superstar, but that's a whole other story. We're not getting into that today. As you know, there is no newsletter this week, and there's a reason for that. I got no one else to fill in for me when I get super busy. So I was supposed to put in the newsletter something about what Ellis sent me about love, and I never had a chance to read it yet. And I was supposed to put in the letter something Lori Dawn sent me about the small groups, and I only had time to read a little bit of that. So I apologize. And then I don't apologize. This week I have been super busy. I have started my days around 9 a.m. and I have not finished each day since last Saturday at 2 and 3 in the morning every day. And I've been busting my tail to get this done. The urgency to getting it done has been brought on by the world events and things that are going on right now in New York and in Glasgow, Scotland. So I wanted to get this done right away. I also had to place myself for the up until Wednesday, so I was trying to get as much done as I could before the interruption started again. So I've created another video. This video is what we're going to play today, and it's addressed to the United Nations. It's addressed to the Secretary General. This video is full of plagiarism. I have copied news reports, other people's videos, and I've done so unabashedly. It's supposed to be a private video. It probably won't be private very long, and then it could get pulled down, or I could, lose my YouTube license, or I put this one on Vimeo to sort of preserve that license a little bit longer. Jim Staley just had his YouTube site shut down. Over 500 videos, 50,000 followers gone. Just like that. No recourse, no warning, no method of objecting and pleading your case. And it reminds me of when we had our Facebook site shut down. No warning, no recourse to complain or be told what exactly we did wrong. And I paid thousands of dollars to build up the following there of over 11,000 followers, and gone at somebody flipping a switch. So I'm very conscious of these things. You will notice that in my conversations or my teachings, we have adjusted, and I've become very careful at how I say things. And even in this video, I will stop and explain things a little bit further, and we will pause this recording to explain them. It's become that bad. The cancel culture is running our society. So I would like to, Randy, I don't know, Randy, do you want to post that email I sent you, or did you able to post it, or do you want me just to read it?
On Messenger, did it go through on the email?
I no, my computer seems to be freezing up, so I didn't get it sent through. I'll just read it.
You want to start with opening prayer before we do that, brother?
Yes. Thank you. I apologize. I get so wound up. I apologize.
I'm still looking for somebody, unless you want to go ahead and say it.
If we have no volunteers, sure, I'll go ahead.
Thank you, brother.
Our Father Jehovah, our powerful and great creator, I thank you, Father. I thank you for the brethren. I thank you for Shabbat. I thank you, Father, for the understanding that you've given us. I thank you, Father, for the revelations you've shown us that have only come because of the Shabbat and Jubilee cycles. I do thank you. I pray, Father, that more people would come to understand your truth and come to understand you and come to know you. I'm not claiming that I know you. I'm still going around in those circles, still trying to come to know you better. But I'm trying. I pray more people would come to know you and understand you're not calling everybody at this time. And I understand that, and it's hard to understand. But I still ask that you would call more and that you would allow us to find more and to help more to come to know you. I thank you, Father, for the opportunity you've given us. I ask your blessing upon the brethren here. I ask your blessing upon the brethren listening to this later, that you help them to understand and that you increase their knowledge, you increase their understanding, and you bless them with wisdom that only comes from you. So I thank you, Father, for the calling and calling us in such a way that we heard it and answered it. So I ask, Father, you be with us today, help everyone understand what I'm trying to present today, and bless us with your gift of knowledge and understanding and wisdom, that we may bring glory to the name of Jehovah in everything that we do, wherever we go. Amen. So, yes, I was going to read the email. So there's a lot going on this week. We have the United Nations meeting here in September. We have the anniversary of 9/11. 20 years anniversary. We have the United States, not unanimously, what's the word I'm looking for? Independently pulling out of the Afghanistan without so much notification to all her allies, and leaving all the allies scrambling to get their people out of Afghanistan. And it looked like a massive retreat at the last moment. There's just a lot going on. And the weather this year has again been part of it. So I've written a letter to the United Nations, to Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And so I'll read the letter that I penned here to him. I'm writing to you on behalf of my small group of believers who are included in the 2.5 billion Christians in the world. I've been following the growth of the UNEP now since 2005. And at the same time, I've been watching the world climate change increase more and more each year. I've also noted the agreement of COP15 and the Paris Accord, which had 192 signatories. And to my disappointment, during this same period of time, I'm also seeing the increase of CO2 emissions and weather around the world becoming more and more violent. While the UN is aiming not to go above 1.5 degrees Celsius, yet others are projecting an increase of 2.7 degrees Celsius at a minimum. This is nearly double what you are hoping to just maintain. I've heard the projections of the UN scientists for 2050, and I've read your plans for Agenda 2030. With all due respect to the scientific community putting forth the numerous reports and to those working behind the scenes to prevent global warming and climate change. But I must say, they have all severely underestimated what is coming. Mr. Secretary, I prepared this video message for you and the UN Assembly, which is meeting now and in Scotland this October. It is titled the UN IPCC Code Red. The video, just over an hour long in total, and is also about 30 minutes of video and news clips to show what is happening, included in that hour-long time frame, is about the 50 years of the UNEP and the ever-increasing global warming, climate change, and the reasons for it, and how to fix it. My reasoning and the simplicity of how to fix this worldwide problem also remedies the current COVID crisis. As you yourself have said about the UN body, that it does too little, too late, and that they have their heads buried in the sand of denial. And because this remedy I am proposing will not be applied, I will also show you what is about to come in the next 10 years, which is going to surpass what is expected to come by scientists in the next 30 years. I know, Mr. Secretary, you may not agree. I do wish to submit to you my concerns for your consideration nonetheless. To be clear, sir, it is not thousands who are about to die from climate change, nor is it the millions about to die from famine. We are expressing our concerns to you in this video for the billions that are going to die over the next 10 years. Billions with a B, from climate change, drought, famine, and plagues. This will lead to massive migrations and wars over water. Mr. Secretary, I am gravely concerned, and I hope you can find the time to watch my presentation. It is not professional. It is just a simple presentation put forward to you by a fellow citizen of this earth. Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule to read my email, let alone to watch the video. Thank you. Shalom, Joseph Dumond, Sedamoon.com. So that is my letter to the Secretary General Guterres, sent to him today. And now I will present to you the video that we've done. It's an hour long, but I strongly feel you need to understand what we're saying. And I think you all do know why we're saying it, but I also think you should understand to whom I'm saying this to and all that is involved in it. I think you need to be aware, and I want you to be aware because I need your support. As some of you know, I'm constantly getting beat up for the things that we're teaching and putting out here, the calendar issue or the do you believe things, or, whatever it is. And some of you are aware of them and most of you are not. And I don't complain too often about it. But if this video is presented to the Secretary General, and if he does actually watch it, the heat could be ratcheted up. And you all need to be aware. We are about to go into a different period of time. We have 2023 coming up in a year and a half. Then we move into 2024. Things are going to start getting worse. You know that. I know that. The world is still hoping that it can continue to get back to normal and be the same. We know it's not. So I'm going to present this video. It could get shut down. It could get taken off for blatantly, and I admit it. I blatantly copy other videos to put into this video to make my presentation. So there's about a half hour of them. I can cut them all out. But the dramatization of these other videos makes my point even stronger. I have it being edited again by a relative who is in the movie industry. And we could do some more edits and tweaking to this. But I wanted to present. So that's what I've spent my entire week doing this week, is preparing this video. There is a ton of work involved. You have to watch countless other videos to take the pieces out that you want. You then have to splice it in. I then have to learn how to do the splicing. You have to learn how to use the tools to do it. It's just a ton of work. And that's why there's no newsletter this week. So I apologize, but I don't apologize because I believe this is very important. And anyway, that's my excuses. That's my reasoning. And that's why I've done what I've done. And so with that, Randy, if you want to hit the play button, we'll start to watch it, and then I'll stop you here in a little bit. The way we think about climate change is dead wrong. My name is Joseph Dumond of siteofmoon.com. Mr. Secretary General Antonio Guterres, members of the 76th General Assembly, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, you represent 193 nations of the world. You are the ambassadors of your nations here at this assembly. In October 2021, you will be hosting a summit of the 26th Conference of the Parties, the COP26, where you will be tackling climate change once again. The first United Nations Conference on Human Environment was held in Stockholm, Sweden, June 1972. The declaration raised the issue of climate change for the very first time, warning governments to be mindful of activities that could lead to climate change and evaluate the likelihood and magnitude of climate effects. The very first principle of this new charter or agreement was the following. The first principle: man has the fundamental right to freedom, equality, and adequate conditions of life in an environment of a quality that permits a life of dignity and well-being, and he bears a solemn responsibility to protect and improve the environment for present and future generations. In this respect, policies promoting or perpetuating apartheid, racial segregation, discrimination, colonial or other forms of oppression, and foreign domination stand condemned and must be eliminated. Okay, stop the video. The United Nations Environmental Program. It's a program to save the environment, and yet the... Okay, Randy, pause the Zoom right now too, please.
I'm not seeing that. Give me 1 second, brother. Sorry.
Very first principle is on human rights. And I've always wondered, what has that got to do with saving the polar bear or the blue whale or the other species of this world? But it'll come back into play in a few moments. Over the next 20 years, as part of the efforts to implement the 1972 decisions, concern for the atmosphere and global climate slowly, very slowly, gained international attention and action. In 1988, global warming and the depletion of the ozone layer became increasingly the dominant international public debate. As a result of the media, this debate grew even bigger, and in 1989 was a watershed year for climate change. As the first significant global efforts were taken, the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer entered into force. In 2016, they said the size and depth of the ozone hole over the Antarctica was considered not remarkable. And yet, as you can see from the pictures, it is the same size. It was said that the ozone levels have stabilized, but full recovery is still decades away. This same UN report also stated the stabilizing of the ozone was remarkable, and it is that same international agreement that successfully put the ozone layer on the road to recovery is now being used to address climate change. The year 2020 brought the 12th largest ozone hole by area in the 40 years of satellite records, with the 14th lowest ozone readings in 33 years of balloon-borne instrument measurements. However, scientists noted that the ongoing declines in the atmospheric concentration of ozone-depleting chemicals, which are controlled by the Montreal Protocol, prevented the hole from being as large as it might have been under the same weather conditions 20 years ago. This is absolutely stunning. Here we are, 32 years after the Montreal Protocol, and the ozone is still the same size. Who do we hold accountable for this? Where has all that money gone? We just shared with you that the same international agreement that successfully put the ozone layer on the road to recovery is now being used to address climate change. If it has the same results, then we are all dead men. In fact, I'm about to show you exactly what those results look like, but we have a little more history to cover first. As the urgency for a stronger international action on the environment, including climate change, gained momentum, the General Assembly decided to convene in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. The Earth Summit, as it is also known, set a new framework for seeking international agreements to protect the integrity of the global environment in its Rio Declaration and Agenda 21, which reflected a global consensus on development and environmental cooperation. Chapter 9 of Agenda 21 dealt with the protection of the atmosphere, establishing the link between science, sustainable development, energy development and consumption, transportation, industrial development, stratospheric ozone depletion, and transboundary atmospheric pollution. The most significant event during the conference was the opening for signature of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. By the end of 1992, 158 states had signed it. As the most important international action thus far on climate change, the convention was to stabilize atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases at a level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. You can see when the UN signed this accord in 1992, the greenhouse gases have gone up by 35% as of 2012. This chart shows you that the CO2 levels for the last 650,000 years have never gone above the 300 parts per million level. As we approached 2013, we were close to the 400 parts per million level. And this chart takes you up to 2018. A full 29 years after signing that agreement in 1992 by 158 nations of the world, creating the UNFCCC. Mr. Secretary, Your Excellencies of the General Assembly of the United Nations, why do we not see any results? In the last 29 years, why do we not see any results? The cornerstone of the climate change action was the adoption in Japan in December of 1997 of the Kyoto Protocol to the UNFCCC, the most influential climate change action so far taken. It aimed to reduce the industrialized countries' overall emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases by at least 5% below the 1990 levels in the commitment period of 2008 to 2012. The protocol, which opened for signature in March 1998, came into force on February 16, 2005, 7 years after it was negotiated by over 160 delegate nations. Again, they were to reduce the CO2 emissions to below the 1990 levels. You can clearly see exactly how well they are doing. This now brings us to 2006, when Al Gore stunned the world with an inconvenient truth. This was off the charts.
Now, if you'll bear with me, I want to really emphasize this point. The crew here has tried to teach me how to use this contraption here. So if I don't kill myself, I'll. It's already right here. Look how far above the natural cycle this is, and we've done that. But ladies and gentlemen, in the next 50 years, really in less than 50 years, it's going to continue to go up. When some of these children who are here are my age, here's what it's going to be in less than 50 years. You've heard of off the charts. Within less than 50 years, it'll be here. There's not a single fact or date or number that's been used to make this up that's in any controversy. The so-called skeptics look at this and they say, so that seems perfectly okay. Well, again, if on the temperature side, if this much on the cold side is a mile of ice over our heads, what would that much on the warm side be? Ultimately, this is really not a political issue so much as a moral issue. If we allow that to happen, it is deeply unethical.
After this, the Copenhagen Climate Change Conference raised climate change policy to the highest political level. Close to 115 world leaders attended the high-level segment, making it one of the largest gatherings of world leaders ever outside UN headquarters in New York. More than 40,000 people representing governments, non-governmental organizations, intergovernmental organizations, faith-based organizations, media, and UN agencies applied for accreditation. The Copenhagen Accord of 2009, while only a political agreement, reflected significant progress on several fronts. It set a goal of limiting global temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius, called on all countries to put forward mitigation pledges, established the broad terms for the reporting and verification of countries' actions, set a goal of mobilizing 100 billion a year by 2020 in public and private finance for developing countries, and called for the establishment of a new green climate fund. It is now 2021, and that 100 billion has still not been reached. On June 17, 2011, South Africa led a resolution at the UNHRC requesting that the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, draft a report documenting discriminatory laws and practices and acts of violence against individuals based on their sexual orientation and gender identity, to follow up and implementation of the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action. The resolution passed with 23 votes in favor to 29 against, with 3 abstentions. It was the first such resolution and was hailed as historic. The report, which came out in December 2011, documented human rights violations based on sexual orientation and gender identity, including hate crimes, criminalization of homosexuality, and discrimination. High Commissioner Navi Pillay called for equitable ages of consent, comprehensive laws against discrimination based on sexual orientation, prompt investigation and recording of hate crime incidents, the repeal of laws criminalizing homosexuality, and other measures to ensure the protection of the rights of the LGBT persons. The text of the report from the UNHRC is dated on the 17th November, 2011. The UN Declaration of Human Rights, that was the very first principle of the UNEP, is now amended to include LGBT rights on June 17, 2011, September 26, 2014, June 30th, 2016. To speak out against it is now considered a hate crime. It was after this UN vote that Western leaders began to support LGBT rights, gay marriage, and the promotion of changes to the laws to accommodate the new mandate. The United Nations Conference on Okay, Randy, you want to pause this Or again?
Oh,
Stop
Rio
the
+20.
recording? Took place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in June 2012, also known as the Earth Summit. At the Rio +20 conference in June 2012, the heads of state of the 192 governments in attendance renewed their political commitment to sustainable development and declared their commitment to the promotion of a sustainable future through the 49-page non-binding document. This acceptance by the 192 nations also included the changes to Article 1 about human rights amended the year before. The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. It was adopted by 196 parties at the COP21 in Paris on the 12th of December, 2015, and entered into force on November 4th, 2016. Its goal is to limit global warming to well below 2, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius, compared to the pre-industrial levels. The Trump administration signed out of the Paris Accord in 2016, which was not ratified until 2020. Then President Biden rejoined the accord as one of his first acts of president in 2021. After President Trump withdrew from the Paris Accord in 2016, former Vice President Al Gore made an inconvenient sequel, Truth to Power, in 2017.
It's supposed to be 70 degrees today. It's freezing here. Speaking of global warming, we need some global warming. It's freezing.
The most criticized scene in the movie An Inconvenient Truth was showing that the combination of sea level rise and storm surge would flood the 9/11 memorial site. And people said, what a terrible exaggeration.
Hurricane Sally slammed into New York City last night, flooding the World Trade Center site.
Storms get stronger and more destructive. Watch the water splash off the city. This is global warming.
I'm so scared.
Despair can be paralyzing, but this to me is the most exciting new development. We're seeing a tremendous amount of positive change. The basis is there, but it's still not enough.
It's crunch time at the climate change conference in Paris. Still some really tough negotiations going on.
What would it take to shift to renewables? I'm talking about breaking the impasse. Virtually every nation in the entire world agreed to get to zero greenhouse emissions. It is unprecedented.
It's time to put America first. That includes a promise to cancel billions in climate change spending. Our plan will end the EPA.
The next generation would be justified in looking back at us and asking, what were you thinking? Couldn't you hear what the scientists were saying? Couldn't you hear what Mother Nature was screaming at you? This movement is in the tradition of every great movement that has advanced humankind.
We're not going to recognize it. We don't want to discuss it.
It is right to save humanity. It is wrong to pollute this earth. It is right to give hope to the future generations. Don't let anybody tell you that we're going to get on rocket ships and live on Mars. This is our home.
Mr. Secretary General, members of the 76th General Assembly, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and my fellow human beings around the world. In 2022, the world will be celebrating 50 years from the founding of the UNEP in June of 1972. 50 years of meetings, 50 years of studies, 50 years of reports, and 50 years of papers published. 50 years and trillions spent. And we have zero results. We still have the same size hole in the ozone, and we still have CO2 emissions going up through the roof. And temperatures are still climbing. What are we celebrating? On September 14, 2021, The Telegraph wrote about a report from the think tank Chatham House. In that report, their analysis shows that the current global efforts to cut carbon emissions put the world on track for warming of at least 2.7 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. This is far higher, if not double, what the threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius agreed to at the UN Climate Change Conference in Paris in 2015, or to what was agreed to in the 2009 Copenhagen Accord. On the current trajectory, the world has a less than 5% chance of keeping global warming below 2 degrees Celsius, and a less than 1% chance of keeping it below 1.5 degrees Celsius. The report warns of major crises if emissions are not cut. For example, 3.9 billion people are likely to experience major heat waves, such as the one endured by residents of Canada, the USA, and Southern Europe earlier this summer. This figure is 12 times greater than the historic average. In 2022, the world will be celebrating 50 years since the founding of the UNEP in June 1972. This current version, known as the Paris Accord, this covenant agreed to by this assembly, made up of 193 nations or the entire world, has failed to stop global warming. It has failed to stop and fix the ozone hole that's still growing. And it has failed to solve climate change through sustainable development. The prophet Daniel, over 2,500 years ago, wrote about this very thing that you have done. And he said, "And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week." The word week in Hebrew is Shabuah, which is the feminine of the word Shavuot, which is the Feast of Pentecost. They shall make a covenant with many for 50 years.
Time to run, people tell us. Look at the force of this flood. The region has seen record high rainfall over the past 24 hours.
Oh my God! Towns and villages across Western Germany have been battered. Houses, businesses, livelihoods destroyed in a matter of hours. Thousands of people left homeless across this region.
Heavy rain, flash floods, extraordinary results. Parts of the capital experienced torrential downpours yesterday. In northwest London, water cascaded from Hampstead Heath onto nearby Finchley Road. Cars were stranded under the Westway, the road which leads out of the city. These are the worst floods to hit this part of Western Germany in living memory.
This fire is raging out of control in southern Oregon as millions of people across the western United States are hit by another round of scorching temperatures.
With the temperature in the town of Stovepipe Wells in California not falling below 42 degrees overnight, the highest daily minimum ever recorded in the Northern Hemisphere.
We've seen heat waves, right across the world, in fact, droughts in one location. And because they're all so much more intense, we can see that the atmosphere is energetic and possibly more energetic than we're predicting it in our climate models. And that's the thing that is really worrying.
Tonight in Oregon, the largest wildfire in the country exploding in size. The fire in Oregon, just one of 70 wildfires raging across 12 states. The Lake Fire is now 7 times the size of San Francisco.
Flash flooding is threatening millions of people. Just look at Newark, New Jersey today after storms rolled through there, and the West cannot catch a break.
The Tamarack fire in Northern California grew exponentially overnight.
Smoke from that fire in Oregon now clouding the skies over Utah. Extreme conditions leading to extreme concern.
Pushing these fires are back-to-back heat waves. This one is the 4th in 5 weeks. and devastating the coastline with hundreds of millions of mussels literally cooked alive. An event so extreme, but with more than twice as much scorched earth compared to the same time last year. Tonight, a record already on track to be broken.
Massive amounts of dead fish are washing ashore all across Tampa Bay. Beaches are closed. Crews are racing to clean up the smelly, decaying bodies or fish. Local experts say it's early in the season to see concentrations of red tide this high.
The images here are astonishing. Thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dead fish floating in the water.
These massive fish kills continue to be a major problem in the Bay Area.
The city says the massive amounts of dead fish started washing up in St. Pete waterways about 10 days ago. But emergency officials say in the last 24 hours, they've cleaned up more dead fish than in the past week.
Dead fish littering the shorelines across Tampa Bay.
I've been coming here for 10 years. I mean, this is worse. It's the worst it's ever been.
Bait fish, sport fish, stingrays, even dolphins and manatees, all killed by red tide and piling up.
It's being described as disturbing, sickening, and rancid. People across 2 counties say they can't believe their eyes or their noses for that matter. KDK's Megan Schiller reports from Upper St. Clair to explain why there's now an active investigation into thousands of dead fish.
There's no sheen on it.
Jack Conroy walks this trail every day, but he's never seen this.
I see 1 dead fish, 2 dead fish, and I'm like, Then all of a sudden, there were dead fish everywhere. Just every fish in that creek was dead.
Big fish, small fish.
But at this point, we don't exactly know what's going on.
You smell that?
Andre Holmes smelled it before he saw it. Hundreds of dead fish dumping out of Chartiers Creek into the Ohio, 15 miles north in McKees Rocks.
I've never seen anything like that outside of a horror movie. You know, I was like, okay, Stephen King type of stuff here.
But it's not fiction. And the reality is the damage is done.
I'm not an expert, so I'm not trying to pretend to be one, but I've been around the water long enough to know that, okay, this is not a natural occurrence.
So let's just take a look at the last few weeks in North America, shall we? British Columbia is dealing with 300 forest fires with no end in sight. Las Vegas just this past weekend tied an all-time record high, 47 degrees. And Death Valley National Park, located right along the border of California and Nevada, hit 54 degrees Saturday, which was very close to setting a record for the hottest temperature ever recorded by humans. But let me help them with one simple thing. The evidence around us is indisputable.
We've seen this relatively frequently in the past years. Is it getting worse as the years go on, or is that just perception?
Well, it kind of seems like it is getting worse. The number of fires that we are responding to is clearly growing.
Fueling a mega drought that has turned swathes of the U.S. into a tinderbox.
There's a tornado right there.
Barrie police are calling the damage catastrophic after a tornado ripped through the region.
And the region's recent heat wave has literally cooked them alive.
It's never smelled like this. Never smelled like this before.
British Columbia's aquaculture industry depends largely on the region's mild climate. That is changing. Farming families who have thrived here for generations are now worried about the future.
This used to be alive. No, there's nothing. Most of the mussels around here now are all gone. My clams, you see the sand dollars and stuff, we're all dead.
The mass dive illustrates the impact of climate change here and now.
We knew the heat might have been bad, but we weren't expecting to see what we saw or what we are seeing.
And Western Canada's recent record-breaking heat may be a harbinger of things to come.
Mr. Secretary General, you said the following on September 10th, 2021. On almost every front, our world is under enormous stresses. We are not at ease with each other or our planet. COVID-19 is a wake-up call, and we are oversleeping.
The pandemic has demonstrated our collective failure to come together and make joint decisions for the common good, even in the face of an immediate life-threatening global emergency. This paralysis extends far beyond COVID-19. From the climate crisis to our suicidal war on nature and the collapse of biodiversity, our global response has been too little, too late.
Excellencies,
More broadly, we cannot afford to ignore the alarm sounded by the pandemic and by galloping climate change. We must launch a new era of bold, transformative policies across the board. We must take our heads out of the sand and face up to future health crises, financial shocks, and the triple planetary emergency of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution.
Mr. Secretary General, in the news conference afterwards, you then said the following: the COVID pandemic has taken more than 4 million lives, is still killing nearly 10,000 people every day, and is circling the globe while a handful of rich countries stockpile vaccines. Climate breakdown and nuclear war pose extreme risks to human life and to our planet. It is difficult to conceive of a more destabilizing invention than autonomous lethal weapons. Inequality, discrimination, and injustice are bringing people out on the streets, while conspiracy theories and lies fuel deep divisions within societies. Poverty, hunger, and gender inequality are rising again after decades of decline. Our world is edging towards a new abnormal, more chaotic, more insecure, more dangerous for everyone. We are moving in the wrong direction, and we are at a pivotal moment. The choices we make now could put us on a path towards breakdown and a future of perpetual crisis, or breakthrough to a greener and safer world.
A dire warning and a stark reality. Global temperatures will rise. It is unequivocal that human activity is driving this surge. The extremes we're now experiencing, fires, floods, droughts, and storms, will only intensify. That is all part of a landmark report by a team of more than 230 scientists convened by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The Western US is sifting through the ashes of yet another catastrophic fire season, one that has only just begun. And today, climate scientists at the United Nations made it clear these extreme events are largely our doing. This independent report released by the UN is the starkest warning yet that the planet is warming to a dangerous degree. It affirms that our burning of coal, oil, and gas is accelerating climate change, and that climate change is behind many of these extreme weather events. The authors say these effects are happening far faster than predicted.
There's really one key message that emerges from this report. We are out of time.
The 3,000-page report is the work of more than 200 scientists from around the world. They found that global temperatures are the hottest in 100,000 years, and many effects of climate change are already irreversible. Those temperatures are on track to pass the target set by the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement and pass them decades earlier than expected. The report says that if the planet warms beyond the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, these extreme weather events are forecast to be more frequent and more severe. The report states that only by drastically cutting greenhouse gas emissions can these extremes be lessened.
Unless there are immediate, rapid, and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees C or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit will be beyond reach.
Scientists say the consequences of climate change are ever present, from the severity of the wildfires and droughts in the Western US to the devastating flooding across Europe just last month. World leaders are set to assess today's report and plot their response at the next Global Climate Summit in Scotland this November.
The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change paints a grim future for humanity that without drastic action to combat climate change immediately, disastrous weather will become the normal around the world. The observed data does not lie. We are in grave trouble. We do have a code red. But the way we think about climate change is dead wrong. Fire drill Fridays, civil disobedience, and massive protests will not fix climate change. Having famous personalities has not provoked you into action. Having children as spokespeople has not been able to shame you into action. But all of you, all 193 members of the UN Assembly, and each of your collective governments, and all the citizens of each of your nations around the world realize that we are in a code red, a warning of imminent danger. Mr. Secretary General, members of the United States General Assembly, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, what you have not done is to connect climate change to terrorism. You have not made that connection. The USA has just ended its longest war, the war on terrorism that began with 9/11 20 years ago this month. Today, after 20 years, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the Taliban are back in power in Afghanistan.
American 11, are you trying to call?
The cockpit is not answering their phone. Our number 1 has been staffed and our 5 has been staffed.
Hey, we're calling from Washington. Situation with the possible hijack.
What's going on? That aircraft is erratic again. Very erratic. Ready, cockpit. Ready, are you there? Ready? Ready? The plane is what? 737?
Say what?
Like a World Trade? Who are you talking to? Oh, God. Oh, my God.
United 175, New York. We have some problems over here right now. And we might have a hijack over here, 2 of them. Jules, this is Ryan. Listen, on an airplane that's been hijacked. The things will go well. I'm looking good. I just want you to know it. Absolutely fuck you. I want you to do good. Go have some fun. Thanks to my parents and everybody. I just totally love you, and I'll see you later. Bye, babe.
What are those people gonna do?
God. So both towers are down.
I got an aircraft out east of the White House.
Crystal City, just north of Crystal City.
Just to the north of your town.
Yeah, stop all departures.
What kind of guy just got hit? Don't tell me that. God damn, I can't protect my NCA.
United 93, that traffic for you is 1 o'clock, 12 miles eastbound 370.
Negative contact, we're looking at United 93.
United 93, Cleveland, if you hear the sound right now.
They got that piece of dog. United City. Out of all
Tuesday, 9:47 a.m.
Hi, baby. Baby, you have to listen to me carefully. I'm on a plane that's been hijacked. I'm on the plane. I'm calling from the plane. I want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry, baby. I hope to be able to see your face again, baby. I love you.
We're 56865. We have, I believe it is a Boeing 757. Can you see him up there, sir?
That's confirmed. It looks like he's rocking his wings.
Brother.
He's rocking back and forth.
We're 56865. You stay away from that aircraft. Go north as fast as you can.
United 93. Have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
When did he land?
He did not land.
Oh, he's down?
Yeah, somewhere up northeast of Camp David.
Honestly, I just want to let you know I love you. And I'm perfectly selfish. I know you are. There's lots of smoke, and you just wanted you to know that I love you so much.
At number 2 ball place is right. Only the stupid can be talking. We're not ready to die. We get the bad.
No. Say I'm gonna die. Live, say your prayers. We're gonna think positive because you gotta help each other get off the floor. Now.
The cost of this global war on terror for the last 20 years stands at $8 trillion and 900,000 deaths. There is a direct relationship between climate change and terrorism. There is also a direct relationship between climate change and the current COVID crisis. The richest nation with the most advanced medical facilities, the USA, has the highest infection rate amongst all nations, with 40.5 million cases, and the highest death rates amongst all nations, with 663,000 dead. This is the most powerful nation, the richest nation, and yet they could not stop this plague. Mr. Secretary, in Leviticus 26, verses 14 to 17, God says he will send terror if we did not obey him. In verses 18 to 20, God says he will send climate change and extreme weather if we did not obey him. In verses 21 through 25, God says he will send plague if we did not obey him. He goes on to say he will send famine and war and captivity next if we do not start to obey him now. This is a chart of the 120th Jubilee cycle. It is the last Jubilee cycle before the end of the 6th millennium. Each of the curses just mentioned in Leviticus 26 go with one of these sabbatical cycles. The curse of terror goes with the first 7 years from 1996 to 2002. 9/11 happened at this time. The second curse of severe and extreme weather goes with the second sabbatical cycle from 2003 to 2009. The other curses follow this pattern, and each curse is compounded with the one before it. Here are the 14 hottest years on record as of 2016, when this chart was made. You will notice they all come after 2001, which was near the end of the first sabbatical cycle. Since this chart was made, 2016 became the record-breaking hottest year on record. 2019 was hotter than all the other years except 2016. 2020 was the Earth's second hottest year, just behind 2016, according to the NOAA. The July 2021 Global Climate Summary from NOAA's National Center for the Environment Information was the planet's hottest month of the year and was also the hottest July in the 142-year record. From the report, the July 2021 global surface temperature was 1.67 degrees Fahrenheit above the 20th century average of 60.4 Fahrenheit, the highest for July in the 142-year record. This value was only 0.02 degrees Fahrenheit higher than the previous record set in 2016 and tied the 2019 and 2020 years. Here's a chart of the hottest decades, and the 2010 to 2020 decade has surpassed even this record from the last decade. A day after recording the hottest temperature in Canadian history, 49.6 degrees Celsius, or 121.3 degrees Fahrenheit, Lytton, British Columbia, was engulfed in flames as a wildfire swept through on June 30th, 2021. June 2021 was the Earth's 5th warmest June on record. Again, we read in Leviticus 26, I will make your heaven like iron and your earth like bronze. This is extreme and severe weather. This is climate change coming from Leviticus 26. The third, fourth, and fifth curses are plague, famine, and sword. In 2020, the World Health Organization declared a worldwide pandemic in March of 2020. The curse of famine, when it comes, is going to be very, very severe.
This week, the United Nations World Food Program warned that as a result of the coronavirus, the number of people facing food crisis around the world could double to 265 million people. For how the developing world is faring, already suffering in many places from the effects of climate change and conflict, I'm joined by David Beasley, Executive Director
of the World Food Program. David Beasley, welcome back to the NewsHour. First of all, you came down with COVID-19 some weeks ago, and you've been quarantined. How are you doing now?
Well, I tell you, Judy, fortunately, I didn't get an extreme case where I had to go to the hospital, but it just lingered for literally about 2.5, 3 weeks. I'd have a little fever, a little ache and pain, but I've cycled through it. I am so much better, and I'm grateful to be talking with you today.
Well, we're very glad to hear that. You are saying this week to the United Nations, to anybody who will listen, that as the world deals with this terrible health crisis, at the very same time, there's another crisis having to do with food.
Well, before COVID came on the scene, literally in the last 6 months, I've been telling leaders around the world, and especially in Europe, that we had a perfect storm coming. We literally were going to see 2020 being the worst humanitarian crisis year since World War II because of Yemen and Syria and South Sudan, the deterioration of the Sahel, climate extremes, cyclones and hurricanes, Sudan, Ethiopia, DRC, and you just can't imagine all these things together. Then desert locusts came upon that, and I'm like, this is just terrible. And then COVID, we couldn't believe it. And so we were already calculating 135 million people around the world before COVID marching to the brink of starvation. And now with the new analysis with COVID, we're looking at 260 million people. And I'm not talking about hungry. I'm talking about marching towards starvation. And that is a catastrophe in itself.
That's a number that I think is almost impossible for us to comprehend, that many people could be that close to starving. David Beasley, how has COVID complicated your work? Clearly the numbers are potentially bigger, but how has it changed the work you have to do?
Judy, it's compounded the problems in so many different ways, economically, but more so at this stage in terms of supply chain. If we can't move food, move commodities, move supplies, then obviously, even if we have money, if we can't get the food to the people, you can't go 2 weeks without food. That's just the reality of life. And so out of the 135 million people that we were saying on the brink of starvation, we feed about 100 million. Out of those, 30 million depend on us 100%. So if we don't have access to that 30 million, we literally could see 300,000 people die per day over a 90-day period.
Can you get it done, David Beasley? I mean, when you think about the magnitude of what you're facing and the constraints now on these countries that you count on to give you money, can you actually get it done?
We can, and that's one thing I love about the World Food Program. Literally, when a lot of other organizations are having to leave countries, we actually step in emergency operations. We know what we're doing. 97% of our people in the field are still in the field doing what they do best. If we have the money and we have the supply chain, we can keep people alive. But right now, it's not COVID versus hunger. We've got to work together on these two issues because they are tied together. It transcends borders, it transcends cultures, and it certainly transcends politics.
Tell us just briefly about a place like Yemen, racked by war for years, and now that's a country that is, we can't even imagine what they are facing. How can the World Food Program make a difference there?
Yemen is a disaster in so many ways. A nation of about 29 million people ravaged by war. The health care system is just deplorable. The economy was terrible before the war started, one of the poorest countries on earth. Population of 29 million people, of which we feed about 12.5 million people. And that means about 16.5 million people get their food otherwise. And so if COVID hits Yemen, it will not only be destroying our supply chain, but the healthcare system and the immunity system of a very fragile society. I can't imagine it being anything but just catastrophic.
And on the continent, a place like the continent of Africa, where you have so many countries that don't have the healthcare infrastructure, in addition to the food challenges, how are you having to change what you do there?
Well, we're working with leaders right now in maintaining supply chain in terms of moving the supplies, making certain that the food can get from the field to the market to the consumer, and doing everything we possibly can there. We're trying to uniquely assess the initial hot spots that we will have. You know, when countries like South Sudan who are losing their revenue and will lose their remittances, and the list goes on. And so we're analyzing out every country to make certain that we're doing what we possibly can. But you got to remember, while everybody's focused on COVID right now, desert locust is just devastating Kenya and Somalia and South Sudan and Ethiopia. So we're dealing with several different so-called plagues at one time here, and it's not easy, but our teams are up for it. We work in war zones. We work in Ebola. We know what we're doing. If we have the resources and we get the dynamics out of our way so that we can do what we do best, we can save lives.
What do you say to Americans who say, we know the need is great out there, but right now we've got 22 million Americans just in the last month who've filed for unemployment. We've got almost 800,000 people who've come down with COVID-19 in this country. It can't be a priority for us. What do you say to them?
Since I took this role, the funding when I arrived was $1.9 billion. With the Trump administration and the Republicans and the Democrats in the United States Congress, you know, Judy, they seem like they're fighting over everything. But when it comes to food security and helping the most vulnerable people in the world, all of them have come together, and our funding went up to $3.4 billion. And the United States has not been backing down. We all want the United States to be strong, because when the United States is strong, it helps us help other people.
Strong message. David Beasley, the Executive Director of the World Food Program, thank you so much, and we're glad to see you feeling better.
Thank you, Judy. Always good to see you.
Mr. Secretary, God said he would give mankind 120 Jubilee cycles, or 6 millennial days. This chart is showing those 120 Jubilee cycles. These 6 millennial days look like this with the Gregorian years. 2044 at the bottom here in the purple is the last year in this 120th Jubilee cycle, and it is the end of the 6th millennium. We are here in the year 2021. Our Bible tells us what is about to happen in the coming years, and is going to destroy your plans for Agenda 2030. And it is going to make the target of holding global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius a distant dream. Mr. Secretary, here are some scriptures to prove what I'm saying to be true. The coming famine. Revelation 6, verse 5. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, come and see. And I looked, and lo, a black horse, and he sitting on it had a balance in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures say, a shonix of wheat for a denarius, and 3 shonixes of barley for a denarius. And do not hurt the oil and the wine. By 2026, I'm expecting this drought and famine to have begun, and it will get worse each year until 2030. What I'm seeing is no rain for that entire period of time. Next, you will see that it's going to get so bad that even the Bible warns the angels not to harm the trees and the grass. Revelation chapter 9, verse 4. And they were commanded not to hurt the grass of the earth, or any green thing, or any tree, but only those men who did not have the seal of God in their foreheads. Then we read about the angels who do have permission to harm the earth and the trees. Revelation 7, verse 1. And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, so that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, do not hurt the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. The prophet Joel also talks about famine in the day of the Lord. Joel 1:15. Alas, for the day for the day of Jehovah is at hand, and it shall come as a ruin from the Almighty. Is not the food cut off before our eyes, and joy and gladness from the house of our God? The seed is rotten under their clods. The storage bins are laid waste. The barns are broken down, for the grain has dried up. How the beasts groan. The herds of cattle are troubled because they have no pasture. Yes, the flocks of sheep are destroyed. O Jehovah, to you will I cry, for the fire has burned up the pastures of the wilderness, and the flame has burned up all the trees of the field. The beasts of the field also cry to you, for the rivers of water are dried up, and the fire has burned up the pastures of the wilderness. This is telling us it's going to get much hotter. So that the water dries up, all the pastures dry up, the trees dry up. It's going to get hotter. In this next prophecy of Joel, he talks about the fires and pillars of smoke and how the moon will be turned to blood. For the summer and fall of 2021, I myself have seen the waxing and waning moon, a deep, dark red every night, and not just during a lunar eclipse, every night. I understand this is from the smoke and ashes in the air, yet it's prophesied here that it's going to happen. Joel 2, verse 30, and I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of Jehovah. And it shall be, whoever shall call on the name of Jehovah shall be saved. For salvation shall be in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, as Jehovah has said, and in the remnant whom Jehovah shall call. Revelation 16:12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the rising of the sun might be prepared.
The Euphrates has been the cradle of civilization in West Asia. The river has been the lifeline for millions in Iraq and Syria for thousands of years. But now it has sunk to a historic low, sparking the region's worst water crisis in years. Our next report tells you more.
The mighty Euphrates River used to near Khaled al-Hamis's farm. But now the river is only visible from a distance. The crops have been destroyed due to the lack of irrigation. Even worse, the farmer's family has been left without drinking water.
We are completely deprived of drinking water. The women have to walk 7 kilometers just to get a bucket of water for their children to drink.
Al-Hamid is among millions of Syrians who depend on West Asia's longest river, Euphrates. Water levels in the river have hit record lows. Neighboring Iraq has also been affected. Both Iraq and Syria have been dry countries. Despite this, the current drought is unprecedented. Rainfall has declined by 70%. Environmentalists are calling it the region's worst water crisis in years.
12 million people in Syria and Iraq are struggling with this, the worst water crisis in years that we have seen. So especially this is, the water table is at its lowest, 70% less rainfall. And this has really wide ramifications for health. It has wide ramifications because drinking water isn't safe.
The issue is not limited to drinking water shortage. Critical facilities like hospitals are at risk of facing power outages. This, as the drought is threatening to bring hydroelectric power plants to a halt.
Power shortages affect people's lives and forces them to use fuel oil. In addition, in the summer when it's hot, people need more electricity. With pumping stations and power generation stations out of service, hundreds of thousands of hectares of agricultural lands are affected, as well as the vegetable, maize, and cotton seasons.
And activists warn that the situation is likely to worsen due to a lack of water resource management in the war-torn countries. Bureau Report, we on, Wild is One.
The way we think about climate change is dead wrong. This assembly and the world is clear that we do have a code red right now. You blame everything and everyone else but yourselves. The UN IPCC report blames the world's woes on greenhouse gases and the industrial world's inability to cut back on fossil fuel usage. The UN IPCC report does not address COVID-19 in the report. The UN also is reporting that tens of millions will be facing extreme hunger by 2050. Let me tell you, that number is wrong. It will be billions with a B, starving of hunger and dying by the year 2029, not 2050. I can also tell you that drought is about to hit the entire world by 2026, which is going to bring on this mass starvation by 2029. Billions will die. The science is right, but they have severely underestimated what is coming and the effects that will result because of it. Mr. Secretary, members of the UN, I understand you will dismiss what I'm presenting because we're told as much in Revelation 9. And the rest of the men who were not killed by these plagues still did not repent of the works of their hands. Your own science and the news from around the world is demonstrating those words written in our Bible. It is time to change. It is code red. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. Think about these words as you celebrate the 50th anniversary of the UNEP.
The next generation would be justified in looking back at us and asking, what were you thinking? Couldn't you hear what the scientists were saying? Couldn't you hear what Mother Nature was screaming at you?
Can you now hear God screaming at you?
These record downpours are creating historic floods and mudslides. This one is from Chile last year, and you'll see that warehouse going by, their oil tanker cars going by. This is from Spain last September. You could call this the running of the cars and trucks, I guess. Every night on the TV news now is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation.
These curses of terrorism, extreme weather, of drought, heat, and floods, along with typhoons, tornadoes, and hurricanes, are sent to us by God. COVID and all her variants, swine flu, bird flu, Zika, Ebola, and the whole host of plagues that are spreading around the world are sent to us by God. Wars, famine, and biblical locust plagues that we are now seeing are also sent to us by God. Even though these disasters are reported as biblical in size, whether locust or flood or drought, no one is connecting them to God as a curse and turning back to him. Mr. Secretary, if you want to defeat COVID and all the variants developing, if you want to solve climate change or global warming and stop all these extreme weather events where people are being killed and their homes washed away, you must tell the people of the nations to turn back to God now and begin to obey him now. The IPCC has declared this a code red. This means the people of the world must turn back to God now. It is urgent that they do so. All your scientists are reporting of imminent danger if things do not change. Return back to God now. Ladies and gentlemen of the UN Assembly, your excellencies, if you want to protect your country from these ravages plaguing the world now, then you must return to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, because that God is the only God who told us these things would come if we did not obey him, and he did it thousands of years ago. You and the entire world can plainly see these things are now here. Al Gore correctly stated It is like taking a walk through the book of Revelations each day on the nightly news. The cure for all that is ailing the world right now is as simple as this. Return to God now. This is the message that you should be preaching from the UN to all the world. Return to God now. Ladies and gentlemen, as I quoted the secretary earlier, where he stated that you are known for doing too little, too late, and for having your heads buried in the sand, I challenge you now to be recorded in history as having been one of those who stood up and did something historic. A nation that stands with God and is blessed by God for obeying him. A nation that is not plagued by terror or climate change or COVID or other plagues. I challenge each of you to do something historic starting today. How will history record your actions? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time to hear my plea and allowing me to make my case before you. If you want more details and information, you can get them in our book, Remembering the Sabbatical Year of 2016, and our other book, The 2300 Days of Hell, which you can get through SetiMoon.com. Both of these were published in 2013 and 2014. Our message we've been saying since 2005 has not changed. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, everyone, for listening to that. As you can see, I'm a little bit passionate about it, although my voice is very monotone. The video is very unprofessional, and it's getting, the high pitches are being, climate change is dead wrong. It's getting, the high pitches are getting sounded out, just like when we do our music beforehand. So there's some things I need to work on to make it better, but that's the message. And that's who it's addressed to. And all the news reports that you saw there were in the last 2 months, June and July. There's nothing other than Al Gore's 2 teachings from, was it 2016 and 2017? There's nothing there before June and July. That's all current information. So that's what I've been working on this week. The urgency is to get it out there and to get it in front of the Secretary General. I've now sent it to him. Hopefully it gets to him and others. It's very unprofessional, and I know that. I'm not claiming to be a movie editor, not at all. But we have a slow motion train wreck taking place before our eyes. It's like watching one of those videos when you see a ship, 2 ships colliding. It's so slow. And yet, why don't they steer away? Well, it's just too much momentum. I want you to understand also that your religion, this walk, this way of life is not a religion. There's something serious at hand here. Not obeying has serious consequences, and you do see it on the nightly news. And people do die. I don't know, 20 or 30 in New Jersey died from the flood here a few weeks ago. Like, they're dying. It's going to get worse. David Beasley said it, that, you know, they're dealing with several plagues at one time. Several plagues at one time. If the United States is cut off, there'll be 30 million people who will be starving because they won't have the food coming from the United States anymore. To think about the numbers, think about it's biblical in size. It's unimaginable to imagine, right? And I presented you a whole bunch of reports that's, like you're stuck to the screen watching what's coming next. Yeah, the slow moving train wreck. But it's also hard to imagine how big this is, how involved this is. You know, you go to your fridge and you got food there, you got food on the table, you got job, you got, you know, you're going to work again on Monday, and you got all these things going on. And yet all these other things are happening all around you. It's huge in proportion. So, as I said before, I would like you for the next little bit not to mention the things that we talked about in the off sessions, and then we'll end this. And I have to leave early today, but we'll carry this on with the conversations now. Sarkis, go ahead.
There are a couple more things I would have liked to have added. Mentioned
Well, hang on, Sarkis, just so you all know, that started out to be a 15-minute TED Talk speech.
Yes, you did, and it was excellent.
It wasn't 50 minutes, it was over an hour. And now you want to add more to it. Okay.
Yeah,
now go
because
ahead.
AOC says the world will end in 10 years. And
who said that?
AOC, Alexandra Ortega-Cortez. She's a congresswoman in.
Yes, I know who she is. I'm trying to quote notable people of.
I know, I understand,
respected.
but a lot of people here, they follow her, and one of the things is, I tell a lot of people is she's telling the truth, because she's on target into 2030, which is very close to the dates of you know, talking about judgment time, and the other thing is, if you look at the September 9/11 and you look at the Rosh Hashanah, if you move it 30 days ahead, just like we did this year, 9/11 happened on Sukkot, just like United States left on Sukkot, Afghanistan. So you go back and look at it. I've been looking at those numbers.
Just say that again. Say that again, because I have not looked at that, and that's really, wow. Say that again, what you just said.
Okay, just like United States left Afghanistan this year on Sukkot, 9/11 happened on Sukkot if the calendar was 30 days ahead.
So this year, everyone who is keeping the holy days are 30 days late. They're keeping them right now as we speak. And the United States left Afghanistan 30 days ago, which was when we were keeping Sukkot right on time.
Yes.
I'm just making a little word difference there. Had we have done that in 9/11, which I've never checked to see if we were at that time.
Check it out, guys. You'll like it. You'll see the numbers. We're right at the same time. And so I've been looking at it for the last few weeks. I mean, last month since the event happened, and I'm like, wait a minute, let me check what happened. And Rosh Hashanah in September in 2001 was started Monday night on the 17th, but it goes through the 19th. And Sukkot is October 1 through 8. So assuming we have August 9, Yom Teruah, that means we hit Sukkot around between the 4th and 11th of 2001. So so Jehovah is doing his work on his holy days, not on man's calendar. The events are on his days. So something to look into. People could research, and so that's why it's important to keep Aviv at the right time, so we can follow his lead. And the reason I like you, Joe, is you help us learn how to keep the holy days at the right timing, looking at the barley when it's ripe, when it's Aviv, so we can celebrate the new year and Pesach and Shavuot and Sukkot at the right time. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Sarkis. As you all know, I put all the evidence out there at the same time that I'm looking at it and judging it. And I'm telling you also to judge these things for yourselves. You have to make that decision and stand by it based on your judgment. I'm sharing what I understand, and you have to make your own decisions. So I appreciate that, Sarkis. Thank you very much. If this doesn't get shut down, if this doesn't get cut for plagiarism, and it does continue to spread and grow, there will be kickback or pushback. And I appreciate what you said there, Ella, but there will be pushback. And I don't think we can imagine the pushback, not just from this, but from everything else that's coming. I want you all to think about that and to, I don't know how to prepare for it, but I want you to think about it. You can see, I hope you can see, we are in those last days. I hope you can see that. You know, one of the things that made me furious was 9/11 being a conspiracy thing and somebody plotting to take down those two people. You got to stop this stuff, because you take away from Jehovah his glory when you deny that he sent these things. Yes, you know, the moon being red. I've been out the last couple of nights. I haven't seen a red moon. So, but this past month, it was red almost every night. That's a natural phenomena caused by the sun's rays passing through the Earth's atmosphere on a lunar eclipse, making only the red rays land on the moon. We can explain that. So right now, when we don't have when we have a waxing and waning moon, we have still a red moon. Well, that's not the sun's rays passing through the atmosphere anymore. That's the smoke from the wildfires only allowing the red portions to shine on the moon, or something to that effect. Yeah, we can explain everything away instead of giving glory to God for the things that he predicted through his prophets thousands of years ago that are now happening. Don't get caught up in that stuff. Glorify Jehovah in everything that he's doing. And the God that Christians think is the good God of love would never send these evil things. You know, we have a number of people dying of COVID right now. And people are thinking, well, you know, I'm protected because I'm following God. You know, tell Jim Staley that he's not protected. You can't. Tell Rob Skiba that he's not protected. Tell Scott Sekulow, who's now dead, that he wasn't protected for following God. These are all good people following God. And they're all, well, Scott Sekulow is dead, but there's a lot of others that are dying. These are from God. If you get sick, it's from God. Does that mean you're a sinner? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that about any of these people. But look at the times we're in, get real with the world and with Torah and God. It's not a game. We're not playing religion anymore. Sarkis, go ahead.
One of the things is everybody expecting a natural phenomena like the blood moons that happen on 14 and 15 and 16. They're not considering natural phenomena that happens from fires or volcanoes that other places don't they may not see fires in the region, but they're thousands of miles away and they see the blood moon. And the whole concept of it, it's easy to give reasoning, just like they do with the Red Sea crossing. And they say, well, the Nile turned red because something happened upstream in Ethiopia and contaminated the Nile River. And then as a result of that, we had a lot of frogs, just they give a lot of natural phenomena, but they don't understand it wasn't that it's because they've rejected God and rejected what is his way of given if when people disobey the commands, they have consequences. We don't believe in consequences as a culture today. When we look at what's going on, we don't pay attention for unintended consequences, actual consequences related to what's happening. So even when we look at crime rate, we don't say it's a consequence that, oh, we release all the criminals. That's why crime rates have gone up. They don't look at it as that. And so it's very easy to look at saying, well, so God said it, but doesn't mean it has to happen. And there's no consequence because we don't believe in God. So, so natural phenomena are meant to warn us and not meant to give us an excuse not to listen to God.
Yeah, my message is to a secularist, atheist body of men and women. And so I didn't go into a lot of detail on the religious side. I quoted Revelation more so because of what Al Gore said. But I didn't go into a whole lot of explaining about the charts and the stuff like that. If I catch their interest, if Jehovah catches their interest, then the follow-up will be what it is. But it's up to Jehovah to open up the eyes, or whoever he is possibly going to put this in front of. Our job is to plant the seeds.
And the other thing is, Joe, is we should plan for a plan A, B, and C, because you're not by yourself. There's a whole lot of families that are learning from you, and we're trying to spread the word. And so you gotta have plans, because the world will always do their own things.
Yeah,
So
I agree, Sarkis. We have, just so you know, there's a number of things that we are doing. And we've mentioned different things. We've created 2 companies, Acubeni PBC, public, became PB, public, I forget what a PBC, Randy, help me out, PBC, what's PBC stand for?
Benefit Corporation.
Benefit, Public Benefit Corporation, thank you. And the other one is Acubeni Helping Hands. And Acubeni Helping Hands is the charitable arm. Acubeni Public PBC, Public Benefit Corporation. I always have trouble with that name. I don't know why they picked that. Anyway, is a investment company to invest in brethren and churches in various areas to help them be able to produce an income and to produce a return that we can share with other people. Those are 2 things that we've started. We've been working at that for over a year now, and we have launched those 2 companies. We're still working on some more details. We have a board of executives working on it, and we meet every Monday night. Every Monday night we meet. Then we have a leadership group who have been working on a number of different projects, and a lot of them have been finished. We've taken the month of the holy days off, but we're meeting, trying to organize other plans. Right now, I've got this video, which is now done. I need a lot more work. I've got the book, about the rapture, finished. It's in the final stages of editing. I'm hoping to have it out very soon. And then we have another book coming out after that, either 1 or 2. One about the 10 days of awe, and the other one about the 89 sabbatical year proofs. I still got to get that one finished. So we are working on things. We have another project that many of you probably never heard of called the ARC project. The ARC project, as in Noah's Ark. In the ARC project, we have collected quietly and by permission every teaching that some of these teachers have put out there. Brad Scott, for one. I believe Rico, Keith Johnson, Nehemiah Gordon, mine, and a few others. Jeff Benner, the Paleo Hebrew guy. So we've collected all those teachings and put them onto a terabyte external hard drive. And the project is to ship those to African, Indian, and Filipino assemblies who don't have access to the internet and could use all these different teachings to help teach their brethren. So that's another project. So each terabyte, I don't know what they cost now, but they cost money to send them out. We have been doing stuff. We have moved the Sight of Moon's website out of North America. It's now stationed in Malaysia in order to protect it from being shut down. YouTube, we're vulnerable, but we've also collected every single YouTube video that I've ever made up until March of this year is now backed up on a terabyte drive. So we have to get the rest of them from March up until now. Jim Staley's website being shut down, YouTube site being shut down is a wake-up call. So that's what we are working on. Gary Haney has introduced me to a brother who's looking after a number of people, a number of groups in India. That's in the process right now. I have another brother in India who's doing work there now with the Hindu people, teaching them Torah. And he's taken our material and is just in love with it. So we are doing a work in these nations that are going to be coming up next. Jehovah didn't open those doors up first to me, but he seems to be opening them up now because the timing is ready for them now. We're still doing the work. I haven't known what to do since day one. In 2005, I was trying to get, Michael Rood and Nehemiah Gordon to take this. In 2010, I was trying to get Rico to take it. And 2008, 2007, Rico to take this, and Monty Judah and Eddie Chumney. And each time the door got slammed in my face, except by Nehemiah. Nehemiah's the only one that didn't slam the door. And Keith Johnson too. But I've been told this is my work, or I'm getting the impression this is my work. We've taken this to other ministries and tried to get interviews. We're trying to get interviews. We're trying to get the message out. The door keeps getting shut. We've been on the 700 Club in Asia. That door is open. We can't get on the 700 Club here in North America. That door is shut. We keep trying to find a way to get this message out. I don't want to go to the United Nations. I've told you before that I used to wet my pants when I did public speaking. I will probably, wet myself at the United Nations if I ever got there. I don't want to go there. But these curses are happening around the world, and if they don't already know, who's going to tell them? There is no other group. There is no other group teaching anybody about the sabbatical and jubilee years other than we don't know when they are. Or, they start right now they start at Rosh Hashanah, but they actually start at Yom Kippur. And we don't have to keep them only if we're in the land of Israel, and it's only for the Jews that are in the land of Israel that have a farm. So That's all that's being taught about them right now, other than what's taught here, other than what you guys are saying and you opening your mouths and telling other people. And it makes me happy when I see you doing it, when I hear about your doing it and your frustrations. Everybody's looking for an excuse not to believe. Why they don't have to do this stuff. Why we, adult diapers are. Thanks, Lori Don. Okay, I shouldn't read the notes when I'm talking. Anyway, okay, Sarkis, help me out because I just completely forgot what I was saying. We're the only ones doing this. We need more help doing it. Sarkis.
Sorry, I was laughing too. Here's your challenge, Joe. The people today who believe the scriptures, who are supposedly believers, they don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear what they've been taught all their lives. That, the church doctrines.
Well, everybody, Sarkis, everybody wants to hear that my faith, whatever faith that is, all 15 billion denominations, my faith is the correct one. I just want to hear you tell me that I'm doing it right.
Yeah, that is true. But when you encounter, I went to a conference this last weekend, apologetic conference, how to defend your faith and share it. And one of the biggest challenges when you talk with professors who are well-known apologetics, and I brought up the Daniel 70 weeks, I brought up the, Genesis 120 years, and trying to explain, I could show them mathematically and statistically, there's no other way to explain the 120 years, 120 Jubilees, and 70 weeks is 70 weeks. And I explain a lot of other saying that 7 Jubilees after Exodus, King David is the anointed one. He's the king. He's the prince. They refuse to listen, and they start giving me the same doctrinal answers. And I keep saying, what is going to take to change is the heart. It's not, people are pursuing knowledge. And then, so I challenged one of the questions to people. I said, do you think Solomon is saved? And they say, absolutely. He was the wisest man and the best known God person. And I said, really? Do you know what his end was? He introduced all the people to worshiping of idols. He drove the people away from God and from Jehovah. And look at his descendants. Even supposedly the worst king was Manasseh. It's not. It's Solomon. Because people are pursuing knowledge. They're not pursuing the heart after God. And that's the challenge, is people are looking for knowledge and tradition. And that's what Yeshua, Jesus, he challenged them in Mark 7. You prefer to put the teachings of elder and traditions of man over the word of God, and you make the word of God void. And what you're doing is what we need to keep doing, is to challenge the status quo. And I'm finding out probably the best way to reach out is not to those who call themselves Christians or believers, is the ones who are the unbelievers. We might have a better chance to reach out to them. And because when you give it the unadulterated truth, they will take it and understand and believe it. Because a lot of people, they are sick and tired of hypocrisy of the church, of the people who call themselves believers. They believe one thing and the scripture is saying something different. You challenge the status quo. It's like fighting tooth and nail to persuade them, and they're not willing to listen. And the unbelievers, once they recognize you're not a hypocrite, you're real, there's a better chance for them to change their hearts and turn to God. And that's where we are at. And our whole family is reevaluating how to approach people now, because we've been talking to the same people over and over and over, and they're not even making a move
They're
because they are
comfortable.
afraid. No, it's not that. They're afraid, just like in the time of Yeshua, they're afraid to be kicked out of the synagogues. They're afraid to be isolated from family and friends. That you are, because the religious leadership and the culture, they control the people. They are not unwilling to risk their lives, their livelihoods, and their reputation, and follow Yeshua. I mean, if you look at the end, when Yeshua died, how many people were there when he met them before he went up to heaven? 500. At the upper room, 120. Out of millions out there. The question becomes here is, if God came down and talked to people and he had a hard time persuading them because of the hardness of their hearts, how much harder is it going to be for us?
Yeah, we got bigger fields to go out into.
Yep.
We have bigger opportunities because of internet and communications. All we can do is just, as Sombra says here, plant seeds. Plant seeds. You don't get to water them. Maybe Julia does, or maybe Scott and Shauna come along and water them, but you just plant them. And then after they've done watering, maybe Randy is going to be the one coming along, picking them up and bringing them the rest of the way. We just got to plant seeds. There's an innumerable multitude that are coming out of this. Where do they come from? Is that the Indian, Asian, Russian, South American nations? I don't know. But there's only 144,000 coming out of the 12 tribes of Israel. So that innumerable multitude needs to be planted so that they can start to think about this stuff during the years in front of us. At some point, this opportunity that we have to sit here and gather and talk peaceably, without fear, is going to turn into Afghanistan, where you will be afraid to even mention things. Then what do you do? Will you know what to do? Will you know how to go about it? Will you know where to look? That's one of the reasons we moved the website out of North America. I'm hoping it'll still be there. I may lose YouTube. I may lose Vimeo. BitChute, well, it's there, but it's in North America. We haven't found one that's outside North America that we can rely on. So do you know what to do? I give you guys homework. I got an email from someone who actually did the homework this week. Yay. Thank you, Pat. But are you guys doing your own studying? Is this all the study you do, is come here and sit here? Do you crack your Bible during the rest of the week? If I'm the only study material you have for the week, then you're in trouble. You're in trouble. You need to be studying. You need to be asking questions here afterwards that I have no clue what the answers are, so that I have to go study. But you need to be studying always. It's the night before the final exams, before you can get to go to university, and you need to pass these exams because your marks are on borderline. How much are you cramming? Sombra, go ahead.
I was at a homeschool picnic this week, and one of the gals sitting next to me is another Torah observant gal that goes to the congregation in the city. And there was a young family sitting next to us. And so we engaged in conversation with them. And at first we were just talking about, that Jewish stuff, the Sabbath stuff, the parts of the Bible that are Jewish, that kind of stuff. And we're all just kind of laughing. And the man is making comments that, he's saying, oh yeah, well, we've done away with all that Jewish stuff. And so Deanne and I were wondering whether he was joking or not. And so then we kind of probed a little more, and then the conversation comes out was, well, okay, so we're Messianic and we keep the Sabbath, we keep the Bible like we were Jews, but I don't even know, are you Bible believers at all? And he said, yes. And then he told us his denomination. And I said, okay, so what is the parameters of your congregation? What do you believe in? Oh, well, we believe in believers' baptism and a cappella music. So I keep probing, I keep talking. And I get to a point where I say, but the Sabbath is like the wedding ring. He says, what? What are you talking about? I said, and then I tell him the Vishamru, right? And it was given to the children of Israel that in 6 days you shall, in 6 days, the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day, he rested and was refreshed. And it'll be a sign to you. And he said, and I'm like, it's a sign to you. And he goes, well, yeah, but I'm not Israel. Oh, that floored me. I couldn't believe that a Christian would say that he's not Israel. You forget. And so the more I talked to him, I was trying really hard not to get heated. And I have no Bible in front of me. I have no phone. I have nothing. I'm just talking off what I know from memory, from heart, from whatnot. Deanne has her phone and she's taken out and she's reading things, and he's got his phone and he's taking out and reading things. So you don't need a tool. You just need what you know. And I didn't convince him, but I apologized to his wife twice. And she said, no, this is okay. This is a really interesting conversation. And you can't forget what seeds you're planting, because that man, when I was asking him about the third temple, I said, well, we don't have a temple. We can't do sacrifices. We don't have a temple. Yes, we do. We have a temple. We are the temple. I said, yes. And our lips compensate for the bulls. But what are we going to do? What are you going to do when the third temple is made and they're actually offering sacrifices again? He says, where does it say that? The end of Ezekiel? Well, I don't read the end of Ezekiel. I don't read Ezekiel. I said, well, it's in Revelation too. Really, he doesn't read Revelation either. But it absolutely floors you what they don't know. And these are people who pride themselves for being believing Christians, faithful people.
I've been putting myself through a lot of pain by joining these rapture, end time prophecy groups and the book of Revelation groups and Christian groups, the born again groups. And it's painful to hear them speak and what they will not listen to.
Yeah.
And how they only want to stay where they're at. And that's why they're in that group, because everyone else in that group is at that same point. So we've arrived. And it is hard. It is frustrating. So, plant seeds, go find another field.
Right.
Plant seeds, go find another field. Then on the way back, bring a bucket of water.
And it's amazing who's listening to you, because apparently I met this other woman at the park 6 months ago. And at this homeschool event this week, she found me after I'd been talking to this young couple, and she said, I'd love to come to Sabbath at your house. So we have an appointment. She and her family are coming next week for Shabbat to learn about Sabbath.
Why do you put pressure on me like this? Now I got to be proper.
Oh, well, no, she's coming for Shabbat dinner, but I will tell her to join you.
No, I'm only kidding. Anyway, anyone else got any comments about the video that I presented today? I have to leave early today, so I just.
Are we allowed to comment on the video that you presented?
Well, then hang on.
Not to.
Let's, Randy, is someone could do in closing prayer?
I don't have anyone yet.
Paul Collier, I see your name here bright and bold in front of me. Are you still awake in Southern Australia?
Yes, sir, I am.
Would you mind doing closing prayer for us, sir?
Thank you. Father, you're awesome. In the last hour and a half to 2 hours, we have seen what you've played over the whole earth and how you're not mucking around. How you're drawing those, many are called, but few are chosen. The ones that are chosen, you are hanging on close. But draw the other ones so that they don't miss out too. And as we continue to do what we need to do, the way you want us to do it, not the way we think it should be done, that we may hear, listen, and see what we need to say to the people who are hurting, who are needing, who need healing. And let you put them in front of our face so that we may feed them the food of your word. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to sign off now. So this will be a short video session for you. But I want you to know you can go to my YouTube site still and sign up there, subscribe, and you can subscribe to our newsletter. We did not send it out this week because I was busy trying to get this video done. There's just, and you can see it's still got a lot of imperfections in it, but it's
Where
there.
is the video? I was just on your YouTube. It's not there.
The video is on my Vimeo site.
Oh, okay.
I do, most of my stuff's on YouTube because the YouTube helps me publicize it more. Vimeo is not set up the same. It's set up a little bit different, but we haven't really pushed Vimeo that much. So this video is on Vimeo. Randy, you can put in the chat there, you want to put the link to the video. You can throw that in the chat. And I'm just waiting before I start pushing the video, I'm sort of waiting to hear if I get a response back from the UN and Mr. Guterres. We'll see if I get any response at all. But it's also a teaching tool for the other brethren to learn. So feel free to share it. It may get pulled down because I've plagiarized all these other news outlets and video outlets. And fine, if I have to shut it down, I shut it down. Or I cut those scenes out, whichever. But the drama, the dramatic effect of those scenes makes the video work. That's why they're there. So with that, help us get this message out. Time's running out. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.